What light is light if Sylvia be not seen? What joy is joy if Sylvia be not by? She dreams on him that has forgot her love. You dote on her that cares not for your love.
Are you going to do it like that? Welcome back to NostalgiaCast. I'm Johnny Craddock.
And I'm Darin Lundberg.
And today we're going to talk about Shakespearean Love, 1998 film, directed by John Madden, not to be confused with the NFL commentator slash coach. In fact, I don't really know much about John Madden, the director. I know he did Captain Corelli's Mandolin, but I don't know much else other than that, and this one. Okay. But anyway, we can talk about him a little later. But John Madden film... And Darin, before we start this episode, we have to do a quick recap of our last episode, which we had a guest. And what was the film? Who was our guest? And what do we think?
Well, we chatted about The Rocketeer from 1991, maybe our third, fourth comic book movie. We had a special guest, Marianne Palooza, otherwise known as the Girly Nerd on Twitter. Very fun conversation with her. She brought a lot of good... she knows old Hollywood really well, and she's really well versed in that. I like how she brought like the muted color schemes of the movie. Like there's no like rich reds or anything. It was more kind of like just like a neutral palette. And so that was really an interesting chat because I hadn't really thought about that. And then obviously we compared it to other comic book movies of today and why it failed at the box office, even though it's kind of climbed to the sword, if you want to get punny about it, soared back to the top of a lot of people's favorite comic book lists, that kind of thing. But yeah, Rocketeer is definitely a movie that deserved to do a lot better. That was a great conversation. Please, go listen to that and follow Marianne on Twitter or on Facebook if you can find her.
All right. Well, that was our last episode. So let's jump into our next episode, which is Shakespearean Love. But before we do, let's go ahead and watch the trailer.
Okay.
Young Will Shakespeare is having a bad year. His last two shows flopped.
Sir.
The theater is about to go bankrupt.
Notice will be posted!
And the gangsters are moving in.
The show must go on.
The last thing he needs right now is a nasty case of writer's block.
What's it called? Romeo and Ethel, the pirate's daughter.
What is the story?
Well, there's this pirate.
Enter his very own Juliet.
Who is she?
Dream on, Will.
I heard you were a poet.
I was a poet till now.
Shakespeare!
My heart belongs to you, but I will marry Wessex a week from Saturday.
Is she fertile?
She will breed.
If she do not, send her back.
If they find you here, they will kill you.
For one kiss, I would defy 1,000 Wessexes.
Miramax Films and Universal Pictures present a truly romantic comedy of errors.
That woman is a woman!
The house is stirring. It is a new day.
It is a new world.
I will have poetry in my life, and adventure, and love.
Gwyneth Paltrow, Joseph Fiennes, Colin Firth, Academy Award winner Geoffrey Rush.
Strangely enough, it all turns out well.
Academy Award winner Ben Affleck.
What is the play and what is my part?
And Academy Award nominee Judi Dench as Queen Elizabeth.
She's been plucked since I saw her last, and not by you. Takes a woman to know it.
Shakespeare in Love.
Romeo and Juliet. Just a suggestion.
Good title.
Okay, so Shakespearean Love, 1998. I didn't see it till 99, but came out in 1998. Like I said, directed by John Madden, not the NFL guy, but the film director. So I want to talk about him real quick before we talk about anything else. What do you know about him? Because I know he's not very well known.
Well, I know he directed Mrs. Brown. I think was the big one before. It also had Judi Dench in it. That maybe
Okay.
is what got him kind of the good graces of the Miramax, the Weinstein Company, which Weinstein, however you want to pronounce it. We'll come back to that. But you mentioned Captain Crowley's Mandolin. I know he did the Best Exotic Marigold Hotel. I think that's the name of it. But
Okay.
like nothing really. I think just a good journeyman director who just knows what he's doing, and he just
Yeah, he's
hasn't
done
done
a
a
few
lot.
TV shows, right? Like, what were some of the TV shows that he's done?
Not a lot. I think Prime Suspect, BBC series. I think The Widowmaker. There's nothing. Again, you look at his filmography; it's nothing like spectacular. I think I would actually say that other than Marigold Hotel, which is pretty popular, I think Shakespeare in Love is his claim to fame, and it just hasn't
Yeah.
really
And you would
had a
think
reason to come
after a
back.
movie like Shakespeare in Love, you would get like all this work. You would
Yeah.
constantly be working after that, but it didn't happen for him.
Yeah, maybe because he just didn't win the best director Oscar. Maybe that's what did it. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a Hollywood's a fickle place, so we don't know.
Yeah. Well, this movie, it has a A-list cast. You got Joseph Fiennes, Gwyneth Paltrow, you got Geoffrey Rush, Ben Affleck, you got Tom Wilkinson, Colin Firth is in there, Judi Dench you mentioned already.
Yeah.
Anyone else worth mentioning?
Well, it was funny because you look at this cast, like they show up, and I just kept writing down names. Like I wrote like, oh, Tom Wilkinson. I wrote Simon Cowell, like, oh, Dame Judi Dench. Colin Firth is a douchebag. Imelda Staunton, I thought was great. Rupert Everett, I think he's
Rupert Everett,
uncredited.
right.
Mark Williams, who plays the Mr. Weasley from Harry Potter now. So and then what was his name? The I can't remember. The guy married to Jim Carter. He's also in Downton Abbey. He's married to Imelda Staunton. I thought it was funny that Imelda Staunton played the Viola's real life maid, and then he ended up playing the maid in the play. So I thought that was kind of a neat crossover. It's kind of funny, but
It's pretty funny.
just like a who's who of British actors, like you showed up, who now, like being very popular. I just thought it was great that even back then people recognized their talent. So yeah, just A-list people, even though they weren't really A-list back then. A lot of them.
Right. Well, I want to quickly go over my history with it. I saw it in 1999, I remember, because I hadn't come home from my mission yet. And so I didn't get to see it in 98 when it first came out, but it was still in theaters, I guess, because they were trying to do the whole, Academy Award push or whatever. Or maybe it already won, right? Did it already win the Academy Award?
No, the Academy Awards, I don't think it was till maybe March. I think what they did is they would release it like the last week of the year to qualify it for an Oscar run.
Must have been what happened, because I got back home in February.
Right. And then they wouldn't release it like to us, like the poor folk. They wouldn't release that until February. They would start rolling that out bigger. So I think that's what happened.
Yeah. But I ended up seeing it with a good friend of ours. Just the two of us went to go see it, and we loved it. We came out of there just like so excited about what we just have seen, and we loved the whole Shakespeare element, just everything about it. It was so fun for both of us. And we came back and we kind of like were talking to you and another good friend of ours what we thought of it, and so we all decided to go back again. And we went and saw it a second time, like I think a day later, 2 days later, maybe. It was like real quickly. We went back and saw it again.
Yeah.
And I remember this. I remember kind of being chastised by one of our friends, like, why'd you guys pick that movie? It's got some nudity in it. And so he got mad at us for watching that movie because of the nudity. But it's very brief nudity. It's not, what would you call it? Like,
yeah. Well, Harvey Weinstein, ever the showman, he tried to push it for a PG-13 because it's very tasteful nudity. I think because Titanic had got a PG-13 with the Kate Winslet nude scene. So
the problem with it was, I think, there was more than one time. There was like 3 or 4 times that you actually see something.
Yeah.
Here's the thing about the nudity real quick. I don't think you need it. I think you can do this movie without it. So I don't know. Well, yeah, whenever it's like, why is that in there? Why do they have to have that in there? And I don't know why people decide to do those scenes, because you don't need those scenes. The message gets across without having to show anything. It's, you can get the point across without it. Yeah. So anyway,
well, we'll come back to that. That was the big. I forget how horny this movie is. I think that's when I was watching it, I was like, whoa, this movie is like really going for it. And I just think it's a very sensual just thing. Again, you could do that. You could choose not to do that. Actresses obviously have a lot more agency now if they want to do that or not. So it's up to the actress, I guess. I don't want to poo-poo that, but you're right. I mean, it doesn't need it. I just think that it adds to the sensuality of the movie. But
Okay. Anyway, I think it's funny that that's what I remember. I remember getting into a fight about about that part of it. But I still really enjoyed the movie. I thought it's just such a fun movie to watch, and all the characters are fun. Here's the thing I had a hard time with when I first saw it is I had a hard time remembering who was who. Like they had what were the names? Pennyman or Fennyman? And then what was the other one? I keep forgetting their names.
Henslow, Wessex.
Henslow.
Yeah.
And who's it?
Tilney.
Burbage, Tilney. All these names kept popping up, and I had a hard time keeping track who was who. I don't know if that happened to you or not, but I was like, now is that Burbage or is that who is that Fennyman? Who's that guy? So you start to kind of like, after a few viewings, you go, okay, I know who people are now. It takes a while to get to know the characters and who they are and remember their names, because their names they're kind of similar sounding in a way, and so you can kind of get them confused. Right. But anyway, my history is I got back from my mission, watched it, loved it, and as soon as it came out on VHS or DVD, I bought it, and that was it. Like I've always loved this movie. So what's your history?
Well, I think 98 was the year that I started dating my now wife. And so she was just the going to movies with me, like every movie. So I think Shakespeare in Love was just another movie that we saw. And it was good. I mean, it was very literate and it was fun and it was rich. And it's not, you hear the name Shakespeare and you think homework, and that's not what this movie is at all. And you still have that kind of pushback. Because I remember putting the disc in last night going, Shakespeare, like this is going to be 2 hours, like how am I going to stay awake? And again, within the first 10 minutes I was in. You know what I mean? It's because it's so fun. The Mark Norman, Tom Stoppard script is just so rich, and it's got so many fun things in it, and it's so smart, and it doesn't rely on the iambic pentameter. I think that's the thing. Like you think that it's going to be very dry, and it's not. It's like it feels very modern. You never have a problem understanding what they're talking about, and it's really witty and it's fun. But again, I don't think it was like something that knocked our socks off. We just liked it. It was romantic, and it was a good movie, right? Yeah. And then we went to go see it again, and it's good. It's solid, and it's we'll talk about it with the Oscar run. I just think it's a very quality, despite its Oscar winning reputation. I think it's a very quality movie, and it's still it's refreshing. I don't know, like I think the last time I saw it was 15 years ago. It was the last time I put it in, and putting it again, I was like, I forgot how entertaining this movie is. And so I mean it's a good quality show.
Yeah. The one thing I like, it does help if you have a Shakespearean background. If you know Shakespeare even a little bit, that helps.
It's a lot more fun, right?
Yeah, you kind of need that, because then you get all the inside jokes. And I like how the script, what you're seeing on screen, is kind of mirroring the Romeo and Juliet play. And as he's writing it, things are happening as he's writing it. And that's always fun for me. Like I've mentioned before, I always like play within a play movies or movie within a movie movies. I love watching the behind the scenes and the making of things. And I like seeing things, the creation process. I love watching that. And so this movie does that. And it's just so fun. I love how they incorporate the play with the real life, love of Shakespeare and Olivia. Is that her name?
Viola.
Sorry.
Right. Well, it's like you mentioned, I have a note here somewhere. It's kind of like watching the Marvel Cinematic Universe today. I mean, it's the movies themselves are fun and they're engaging and they've got good chemistry and humor, but it helps if you know a little bit more about the history. And I thought that was funny. It was like, oh, this is kind of like the MCU because there's a lot of Leonardo DiCaprio pointing stuff, right? Like I think the first time you see Will, he throws some papers around his room. One lands near a skull, which is obviously Hamlet. Another lands in a chest, which is Merchant of Venice. Later he's walking on the street and there's a priest or something, a plague on both your houses, and he writes it down. He quotes Hamlet like later on when he's talking to the Geoffrey Rush character Philip. But so there's a lot of stuff in there that you kind of point and go, oh, I know where that's from. Like I wrote, oh, the balcony scene when they're doing that. I thought that was really fun. It does help when you have that kind of that history with it. And you and I being in drama together in high school, that brought back a lot of memories of doing Shakespeare scenes and plays and doing all these other things. Was that something that came to your mind when you were rewatching it?
Yeah, it definitely brings back memories. I was never in a Shakespeare play, but I did a lot of Shakespeare scenes for, like, competitions or for class or whatever. I did a lot of that, but I never did an actual Shakespeare play all the way through.
Yeah.
Always wanted to, but never did a Shakespeare play while I was in high school or college. So didn't get to do it.
Demand it.
Yeah.
Well, the stuff with when Will discovers who Viola is and they just can't keep their hands off each other and they're finding all these excuses for him to nod her hand or to kiss or all these things. And I thought, oh, that reminds me of being in plays. Like we'd have our little crushes and our little like romances like behind the scenes. And so that was kind of a flashback to that. I liked the, being able to go out and give a line and getting applause and stuff like that, and just the thrill of being on stage. It gets a lot of that, and so that was really fun to revisit, I thought.
Yeah, that can be addicting. I think that's kind of what happened to me. When I first experienced it, I got hooked on the applause, and so that's why I kept doing it all those years. Anyway, let's talk about the because I know you want to talk about this. Let's talk about the Shakespeare conspiracy theory about how Shakespeare didn't actually write these plays, because the movie touches on this, and
the
they kind of
anti-Stratfordian conspiracy. It's interesting.
Yeah, they definitely throw things in there to make you aware.
Well, again, it plays with that. It plays with that stuff, and so it's this screenplay. I think what happened was just a kind of a tangent. I think Edward Zwick, who directed Glory, Legends of the Fall, he optioned the movie or had the script, the Mark Norman script, and then he had Tom Stoppard, who co-wrote Brazil, co-wrote Empire of the Sun. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead. Obviously, that kind of option of Hamlet. So he rewrote that, and Julia Roberts was attached for time. They tried to get Daniel Day-Lewis to play Shakespeare. That didn't work, and so it just never happened. And so finally, it came back, and they made it this way. But during all that, like we're in high school, I'm taking Shakespeare classes. Like one of the topics that we covered was this anti-Stratfordian kind of conspiracy, where you have these people that look at the history. For some reason, they latch on. It's kind of like anti-religious screeds that you kind of like go down a rabbit hole and you get addicted to. And I think that's what it was. People just like, if you look at the history of Shakespeare, like he wasn't born into a rich family. I think his dad was a glover, like a glove maker. They weren't educated. There's no record of any writing or signatures from them. So they probably didn't know how to read. And so he didn't have the money to get a proper education. What was all this other stuff? Like, there's no record of his education. There's no personal letters that he wrote. He didn't own any books, like in his will and testament. There were no books or plays that he gave off. And so there's nothing. So there's no mention of other plays, no mention of his wealth. And so when you look at all these plays and the politics that are written, it's like, how does a poor kid from Stratford upon Avon with no experience outside of London or England, right? How does he know all these things? How does he know about politics? And so you kind of get like attached to that. And so you've got people, I have a list, like Charlie Chaplin was a believer that Shakespeare didn't write, wasn't Shakespeare. Mark Twain wrote a thing, Sigmund Freud, Derek Jacobi, who we know from Kenneth Branagh's stuff. He's a believer that Shakespeare didn't write his stuff. Mark Rylance, who's a big actor now, he doesn't believe in that. So I think people just kind of get attached to it, and then they do histories of who was Shakespeare. Like, was it Christopher Marlowe? Was it who are some of the others that I had? Francis Bacon, Edward de Vere, Earl of Oxford, William Stanley, Earl of Derby. So you have all these people that are candidates for writing this, who had the education to be out and do all this. And so there's this whole thing, and it comes down to, like, it doesn't matter, like, I guess, who wrote the plays. The point is that the plays are what you focus on, right? Like these 37 plays that Shakespeare wrote. I think that's another thing too, is people are like, how does this uneducated dude write so many classic, brilliant plays? It doesn't make sense to them. And so they have to kind of parse out the information and make sense that way. But the fun thing about the movie, though, and I noticed this from the very beginning, is when you look at these conspiracy theories, which are all crazy, like all of us at least have one conspiracy theory that we believe in, even though it's crazy. I mean, we could probably look into our minds and find one, but the main thing that people focused on for Shakespeare being not Shakespeare, and for like being one of the great frauds, I think, was that there's record of only 6 signatures, and they're all spelled different. They're all written different. So the handwriting isn't the same. The spelling isn't the same. I just have there's 6 surviving signatures. They're all on, let's see, 4 legal documents. They're authentic. There was a disposition on a case. There was a purchase of a house. There was a mortgage of that same house. There was a last will and testament. And again, like, he spelled his name different. And so, you're a high school student, or you kind of latch on to these things. You become a snob. You're like, oh, like Shakespeare didn't write his stuff, and I have proof. And you can go and you can find all these things, right? And I just remember sitting in the theater, and literally your first time you see Will is he's practicing his signature, and he's writing it different, and he actually shows, I think, some of these that have the history of it. And I just remember just falling in love with the movie from that moment, because it says to you that this is a romantic, all this stuff is out there, like, we know all this, but this is a romanticized version of Shakespeare. Like, just go with it, right? We're not going to be historically accurate. It's not that kind of thing. It's just, it's that MCU, like, interconnected, like, it's just all these fun little Easter eggs that you can find if you know your Shakespeare. And then even if you don't know your Shakespeare, it's still fun and it's still literate. It adds that extra layer. I just thought that wow, this screenplay is so smart that it's able to weave all those things in, and it's just aware, like me sitting down in that seat and just having my, kind of just, looking at, like, side-eyeing the movie, right? And then just to have it do that from the first thing, it's like, oh, I get it. That's great. Thank you, movie. It's like it was made for me. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah, they're letting you know that they know the inside jokes too, and they're smart like you.
And it's not important. That's not what we're focusing on. We're not doing the studious thing. It's not the kind of movie it is.
One other thing that kind of like supports that conspiracy theory is that in his last will and testament, he only gave away like his bowl and his spoon or something like that. Like, that's what his most cherished possession was, like his bowl. That's what he gave away, and nothing to do with his plays or his writings or anything that he may have accomplished in his life that you think would be something that he'd want to, hand down to his, future generations. It was his bowl or something like that. Anyway, that's one of the things that I read about. And I did kind of go on a binge, and I kind of like researched all of that, and I went into all of it, and it was very interesting. And I started to go, you know what, maybe he didn't write these things. And maybe it wasn't him. It makes more sense that he didn't write them. But who knows? I don't know. I mean, we'll find out.
Well, let me ask you a question though. I mean, is that, because again, I think authorship is important, especially, again, I keep bringing the MCU into it, but if you're looking at franchises, something I'm really big on is authorship and personality and a voice. I need to know that the filmmaker is in there, right? So does that apply to this? Is it just, it doesn't matter who wrote it, it's the plays, or is it like, we can look at like Edward de Vere, let's say that he was Shakespeare, right? And he couldn't, there's you could look at it, maybe aristocrats, like, they couldn't like claim that kind of thing, right? Because they could get in trouble for criticizing the politics of the government.
That makes sense. That makes sense. They would use like someone to just use their name,
a pseudonym, a pen name.
Exactly.
Right? So, and you could look into that and find all these different, like, personal asides. That makes sense because he did this, or that makes sense because he did that, right? But for you, is that important to you? Is it just the plays that matter, or does it matter who wrote them? What do you think?
Well, here's the thing. I mean, I don't know. I can't really answer that, clearly, because I can say this. I think whoever wrote it, like, wrote all of them. You can tell it's the same author, whether it's Shakespeare or whether it's somebody else or whoever may have written them. It's the same author. It's the same language, the same voice, and you can tell that person wrote the plays.
Right.
So whether it's Shakespeare or not, I don't know. I mean, they're still really good. They're really well written, and I don't know. I'm not sure if it matters or not.
Well, you're performing them. It doesn't matter if de Vere wrote it. It doesn't matter if Marlowe wrote it. And you're performing the words, and it's the words that matter.
I think authors would like credit for their work, though. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's important to give the correct author the credit for what he's, written. That's important.
Well, it's the same thing. You couldn't have like a woman acting on stage. It's just what you had to deal with at the time. Like, they couldn't accept authorship because it could have gotten them in trouble. They could have been thrown in jail, like Thomas Kidd or Marlowe, or tortured or stuff like that because of their beliefs. And so, it's just, I don't know. It's just, we'll find out, like you said. But I don't know if it's something that's going to keep me awake at night. I think all this stuff is just there and it's tantalizing, but I just think it's the plays that really matter. And you're right. Like, they're all written by the same person.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you mentioned earlier that it may have been, as far as the casting goes, it may have been Julia Roberts. So she was attached, and then she wanted Daniel Day-Lewis.
Right.
How do you think you would have responded to the movie had it been those two? in the two lead roles. Do you think you would have liked it just as much, or what do you think?
It's hard to say. I mean, Julia Roberts was big at the time, and I think when you look at the history, like she just wanted Daniel Day-Lewis. That's all that's the only person that she wanted. I know that she tested with Hugh Grant and some other people, and she just kept finding reasons not to do it. So she finally just dropped out because Day-Lewis was, I think, committed to something else, and so he just couldn't. So she dropped. So I know Daniel Day-Lewis could have played him. Daniel Day-Lewis can be funny. Like he's not just a serious person. I just think that, I don't know, having Paltrow and Fiennes, I think they just kind of really latch on to those roles, and I can't imagine anybody else. Although I think Roberts and Day-Lewis would have done a fine job. You know what I mean? But that's not the movie that's in my head, because all I can picture is what we've got.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad it worked out the way it did, because I don't think I would have liked it had it been Julia Roberts.
Yeah,
and you know I'm not a big fan of hers.
Yeah, Fiennes and Paltrow have a great chemistry. I believe
Yeah.
that they were in love, right? They had that romance, and I got swept up in it. It was just very, and that's hard to do. It's like Queen Elizabeth is like, there's no way you can convince me that these people are in love, but you can, right? It just depends on the performances and the writing.
Yeah. So Joseph Fiennes, obviously, you know, his brother's Ray Fiennes. He hasn't done quite as much work as Ray has, but I mean, I still think Joseph Fiennes was great as Shakespeare. I think he did a great job. I really like this. I like the little mannerisms that he threw in, where he had this like ritual that he would do whenever he would sit down to write. He like, you know, spin the quill and like
And
do a
spit.
circle and like, you know, spit and then pull the chair. And that was something he did every time. And I loved that. I love when people, I don't know if it was an actor's choice or a director's choice or is in the script, but I love that, you know, this character had that little ism that he would do. And whenever I see that in movies, I always go, that's awesome. You know, I love watching characters that actually have these little quirks that they kind of, you see throughout the whole film, you know, or you see them, those little quirks kind of like progress, or, you know, whatever. I like seeing that kind of stuff.
Right. Well, it's sad because I think, I don't know if there's, we've talked about this before. I don't care what actors do in their spare time. Like if they're going to be caught up in some ugly stuff, it's like, that's not really what I'm interested in, unless it's like, you know, really bad and you can't escape it. I know we've talked about Kevin Spacey before and that kind of thing, but like, I don't know if Fiennes did something that made him not have more leading roles. I know he was in Enemy at the Gates with Ed Harris, I believe. Jude Law, I'm probably getting that wrong. Killing Me Softly, he was in with Heather Graham, which was kind of a softcore kind of porn movie. He was in a version of Merchant of Venice. So I don't know why he didn't become more of a star, because I think he's got a charisma to him, and I bought him as a ladies' man. And it's, again, I forget how horny the movie is and how everybody's so horny for William Shakespeare, for playwrights, you know what I mean? But
Yeah,
I don't know, what did you think of Fiennes? I mean, do you think he should have been a bigger star, like Bill Campbell, like we talked about last time?
yeah. I mean, I thought he was great. Like I said, on my wife were talking about that after we watched it. Like, why haven't we seen him in more films? And one other actor that came up was Billy Zane. Somehow Billy Zane didn't get a lot of work. I mean, we always thought he was really great, and you don't really see him around very much.
Right.
But anyway, it kind of reminded me of that. Like, he's in this really big movie. He's this, you know, it's an Oscar-winning movie. He's, you know, he's really good in it, and then you kind of see him drop off. Nothing happens.
Yeah.
Kind of like the director. Like, he didn't really get much work after that either.
Yeah, it
But,
was strange because it's just such strong work. I know we've talked about comedy before, like with Frank Oz and things like that. I think Madden's direction captures the wit and captures like the comedy, especially when they're having that big old brawl, you know, in the middle of the stage, the theater, right? I think the direction's handled really well. And I bought, even though their clothes seemed modern, like not like a Knight's Tale type modern, but it seemed like recognizable. Like they weren't like so out of fashion that he had a hard time like vibing with what they were wearing. But I didn't doubt for a second that it took place back then. You know what I mean? As a period piece.
I believed it. I thought that was really good.
So it's just strange that you have great direction and a great lead acting performance, and then nothing. Like, it's just, you know, fickle. Hollywood's fickle.
Yeah. So, do you agree with the Gwyneth Paltrow win for Best Actress? Because who was she up against that year when this came out? I know she probably wasn't the favorite, right?
Well, if we're looking at this, I think it's interesting because you had another movie, Elizabeth, that was out about Queen Elizabeth, and it was Cate Blanchett as that character, and so she was nominated for Best Actress along with Judi Dench. Joseph Fiennes was in that. Geoffrey Rush was in that movie too, and so there's kind of a weird overlap. And so Kate Blanchett was up for it. I think Fernand Montenegro, I'm hoping that's not right. Central Station. Meryl Streep from One True Thing, which I don't remember that at all.
Okay.
Emily Watson, who's a great actress, probably should have won for Breaking the Waves, like one of the most bravest, rawest performances I've ever seen in a movie. I know that was an Oscar.
I've heard you mention that before. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think maybe Kate Blanchett was like the top, because Meryl Streep, it's just like a Disney movie coming out. Like, you're going to nominate a Disney movie for Best Animated Picture. It's like, oh, if Meryl Streep's in a movie that gets some
Better nominate her, yeah.
Yeah. But I don't think Gwyneth Paltrow is an upset so much as maybe Best Picture was an upset for Shakespeare in Love. But I think she did great. Again, she sells the romance. I think it's hard to do. Another note I had was when she comes out as Thomas Kidd or whatever
Thomas Kent, yeah.
Thomas Kent, the name she takes, and she's performing the lines on stage, whether it's Marlowe's words or Shakespeare's words. That takes some effort, because you want to look like you're a good actor while you're acting like you're acting. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
that's tough to do. And then I think she manages the frustration of having to marry Wessex. It's always funny seeing Colin Firth in douchebag mode, because I don't think of him as a douchebag. I think of him as a good guy. But I think she handles all that well. You can really feel that longing when they're not going to be able to be together at the end.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll come back to that, but it's a haunting ending, and I just think that has to do with the performances. I think it's a strong performance. I don't think she's been nominated since then, and she's become maybe kind of flighty to the point that, again, she didn't remember she was in certain MCU films, even though she's a pretty strong presence as Pepper Potts in those. But
Iron Man's, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, if this is the role she's going to be remembered for and win an Oscar for, sure. Like, she did great, I thought. It was very
I thought she did great too. Yeah.
Yeah.
There are definitely some moments where you really feel the emotion and you go, that was it. That's what that part needed, and she brought it. So I think she was deserving of the Oscar.
Again, is that coming back? Is that just the direction? Is that just the writing? Is that just the performances? Or is it a melding of all three of those that makes it work? You know what I mean? I think that it's a complete package. I think this movie is a complete package, and all that ties in, I think.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So let's talk about the Oscars, because this was an upset. It wasn't expected to win Best Picture.
Nope.
So kind of like what you did with the Best Actress just now. What were the nominees for the Best Picture that year? And we can talk about what we think about each one of those.
Well, the big one was obviously Saving Private Ryan. That was the other big contender of that year. And
that was probably the favorite.
Yeah. It's weird, because I know we've mentioned the Oscars before, and I know I'm on record saying that I think it's a hustle. I think it's a joke. It's just you and I were in high school, and it's a popularity contest. That's all it is. It's like, Sally Field winning the award and saying, "You like me, you really like me." It's like, yeah, that's all that it is. I guess 50% of the time, it's not about the quality of what wins. It's about the persona that you kind of give off. And so it's, like I said, it's fickle. Like, I don't know how Saving Private Ryan and Shakespeare in Love became the odds-on favorites. I know that Private Ryan had a big impact and was really huge in Spielberg's career. And that Best Director, I don't say this a lot, but that Best Director Oscar for Private Ryan is well-deserved, because that's a masterfully directed film. But if you're also looking what else was nominated, you had Elizabeth, like I mentioned. You had Life is Beautiful, which is the token foreign movie. We're also going to nominate it for Best Picture. And then you had The Thin Red Line, Terrence Malick coming back after decades, which, again, Thin Red Line, wonderful, powerful movie. But I just don't know why, other than the cultural footprint that Private Ryan left, and we'll talk about that some more when it comes to the quality of the win. I don't know how Private Ryan became an odds-on favorite. I know that Shakespeare in Love became an odds-on favorite because Weinstein was such I'll just say, he's a whore, right? He's whoring himself out. He whored out his actors, made sure that Paltrow was out there, doing interviews and showing up on magazine covers. And I think Letterman even questioned her, are you here on your own free will? I think it was one of the times that she was promoting the movie. And so it's just, they really pushed it. And I think besides being fickle, the Oscars are all about who gets the most face time, who does the most promoting and the campaigning. And that's what wins, which I don't think is fair. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I wish there was a way to decide the winner without any of that. You know what I mean? I wish there's a way to just based on the work and based on the quality of the work, and that's what wins, not who does the most interviews or who pays the most money to what charity. I don't know, whatever they do.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, it'd be nice to know which really was the best picture, which was the the best directed, which was the best screenplay. All that should be, considered when they decide what the best picture is, not just, like I say, who's out there the most.
Well, the other thing too is like Private Ryan came out in July, and so who was it? Siskel and Ebert did a kind of a talk or an episode on Oscars, and Oscar voters have a very short attention span. Like if it does, you have your outliers like Silence of the Lambs, obviously came out in February, made such an impression that it ended up winning the Best Picture, Best Actor, Best Actress, Best Screen like a year later. You know what I mean? But like I think Shakespeare in Love was just so much forefront in everybody's minds, and it was all the ads were inescapable, and it got nominated for 13 Academy Awards versus Private Ryan's 11 Academy Award nominations. And so that's in your face, you know what I mean? And all the promotion for it, other than having like Spielberg just have his name stand for itself. I don't know, like they were just pushing this to the point where I think that it was surprising, but it was a given that Shakespeare in Love won. If you really look
Shakespeare in Love, I would agree it's a good movie. Everything comes together in this movie, and I agree with that. But I don't think it should have won that year. I really do think that overall, Saving Private Ryan should have been the Best Picture winner. It was the one that made, for me anyway, a bigger impact on me than Shakespeare in Love did. As much as I love Shakespeare in Love, Saving Private Ryan, I think, was the better picture. And this is the thing that's always bugged me too. I'm not sure that this was the year it happened, but when did they start giving out different awards for Best Director and Best Picture? When did they start separating that? Because how can you have a Best Picture if the Best Director didn't direct it? You know what I'm saying? So that didn't make sense to me. But was that the year this happened? They started doing that? Do you know, or is this the year before, or what? Because it seemed like it wasn't always the way. That wasn't always the way it was.
I think maybe it was always the way. It was just particularly surprising because everybody thought Private Ryan was going to win. But you go back even to 91, and Barbara Streisand did not get a nomination for The Prince of Tides, right? And that was a joke during the Oscars. I think Bill and Crystal even joked about that when he was emceeing it. So it's always been a thing. Like I said, fickle is a word that's going to keep coming back up. If you're here, so the thing with this movie is, like, you look at, did you ever see The Reader with Kate Winslet?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Not a good movie. Like, it's very saccharine and it's very cloying, right? And she gives a strong performance, but that's a movie that was promoted, for lack of a better term, they promoted the shit out of that movie and they pushed it. It was a Weinstein thing. And so that's what got that the nomination, as opposed to, I don't know, the Dark Knight. There was a whole controversy that should have won. Not won, but at least been nominated.
Nominated, right.
And that's why they brought back the 10 Best Picture nominees as opposed to just 5, right? But like, you look at that and you look at like what should have won. That's quotations. Like, I don't know what should have won. Like, it's all subjective, right?
Yeah, that's the other problem is we have people deciding this. It needs to be some other way to decide how they win.
They don't speak for me, right? They're speaking for them, right? But the thing with Shakespeare in Love is, even though they were promoting this like crazy, right? I was watching it last night going, they didn't need to push it because the movie speaks for itself. It's so good and it's so fun and it's so enriched with the performances and the wit that I think it just sells itself. You didn't have to do that, right?
Right.
I think that the movie, like I said, the movie is wonderful. This is a wonderful movie, right? But if you're looking at the thing with the Oscars is, like, you go back to 1942 or 41 when How Green Was My Valley won over Citizen Kane. At the time, like, there's obviously the controversy that people didn't like Wells because he kind of stepped in and kind of showed up everybody, right?
Yeah.
But if you look at those, How Green Is My Valley, which is a fine movie, but it's not talked about as much as Citizen Kane, because Citizen Kane, when that came out, there were shockwaves that went through the whole studio system about how you make movies and what you can say and how you can do them, right? And with Private Ryan, and I got in trouble on Twitter for saying this, it healed generations of people. Like, World War II, the veterans that fought in the war, they weren't able to talk about it. They could not talk about their experiences. And their families just thought that they were just stubborn, like didn't want to talk about it. But when you watch Private Ryan, all of a sudden, all these grandchildren and these children, they watch this movie and were like, oh my gosh, this is how it was. It's not John Wayne, raw patriotism. There were actual, gore and bodies being just destroyed and just so much horror. And then again, the direction is so good that it erases decades of what we thought of as war movies, right? And so it had that impact. It healed people. It brought people together. That sounds cheesy, but that's what it did. It opened the doors. And so I think, as movies, Private Ryan had that impact. I don't know. I don't want to use the word should, because That's just my opinion, but that's the movie that had the lasting kind of experience on people and made an impact, an imprint. And Shakespeare in Love, as good as it was, it's not really talked about, to the point where I've probably seen Private Ryan more than a dozen times over the past 20 or 15 or 25 years since it's been out, right? And I've seen Shakespeare in Love maybe 3 times, even though I like it a lot. But it's not something I go back and revisit, because it doesn't, I don't know, I don't walk out different. I walk out entertained, which is the point of a movie, but I don't walk out a different person. And I think that's the difference.
Well, yeah, I think you made the point. I think that's what a Best Picture movie should do. It should leave that lasting impression. It should make the impact that that's what you want from a Best Picture. Yeah. And so I think that's why I would think Saving Private Ryan should have one.
Right. But yeah, it's just subjective. Who knows, right? I mean, I'm not mad that Shakespeare in Love won, because it's a good movie. It's, it's not like watching something else, but how did this get nominated? It's not like, I don't know, Crash from 2005, which is just a piece of crap movie. I don't know. And you watching it like, what? Obviously this won because of some other reason than the quality of the movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's kind of like the whole American Idol thing where Ruben wins, but Clay Aiken goes on with the career. You know what I mean? Like the number 2 actually has the lasting impact, and number 1 doesn't. But anyway.
Yeah, and I don't think Fiennes was nominated. I don't think Geoffrey Rush was nominated for this. I know he was nominated for Elizabeth. But Geoffrey Rush is great. Tom Wilkinson is great. Like, even though Judi Dench might be another, because she has like 6 minutes that she's in this, but I think she makes such an impression, and she's given such good lines, and she's so authoritative, and she has that presence that it's like, wow, like, what a performance, even though she's just in it for 6 minutes. I don't know. I thought that she was great. Had a lot of good
honestly
fun.
I gotta say this, I really like Ben Affleck in this movie.
Oh my gosh,
I think he really does a great job in this one.
He's so funny. I think we said before, I don't think he's like, when he plays dark and moody like Batman or something else, I don't think he works, because I don't think he has that in it. But when he's charming, and when he's basically just playing himself, right?
Yeah.
I think that he's great. He had a lot of, I don't know. Let's talk about this too, because I like the way that this movie is about movies. You know what I mean? It's about Hollywood. And so the Affleck character, Ned, he's kind of, I think Affleck described him as the Tom Cruise of his day. He's just the star actor that comes and says, I don't even have to try out. What role am I playing? That kind of thing.
What is the play and what is my part?
What is my part? Yeah. And then I like how, I'm trying to find the line. I like, and we'll talk about this too, I like how the play and the writing, it starts winning everybody over. So all their egos are left at the door, because it's the writing that matters. I love how it's the Ned character that says, you need to change the name from Romeo and Ethel, the pirate's daughter, to Romeo and Juliet, right? And like, Will reacts is like, thank you, like, you're a good man. And then Ben Affleck walks out and he goes, and you, sir, are a Warwickshire shithouse. You know what I mean? He's so funny, and the Mercutio character is like maybe the star role, and so the most memorable role of Romeo.
Mercutio is the character that's coveted by most actors. That's the part you want to play. That's what's so funny about it. No one wants to play Romeo.
Right. Well, again, I think another reason why this movie won is Hollywood loves it when a movie's about Hollywood, right? They love that kind of thing. And so the way that the Wilkinson's character, what is his name?
That's Fenneman, right?
Fenneman, right? He's the producer, right? He's the guy that doesn't know anything about anything. He just gives the money, and he just wants it put right. And he's so excited that it's got comedy, it's got dogs, it's gonna win, like, make me a lot of money, right? And so, but again, it starts winning him over to the part where he wants to have a role in the play, and he starts like, standing up for his actors and being a part of that team, right? And it has the writer, obviously it has the big star, it has the the diva. I think Ben Affleck is probably qualifies as a diva, that kind of. I don't know. What do you think of all that stuff? Was that a particular high point of the comedy of the movie for you?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, I love that, and I love watching Tom Wilkinson rehearse his lines, and then just get so excited about his scene. It's so fun. And also, you sent me a text with the picture of the of the program, the flyer they put on the wall, on the post,
which is so Hollywood, right?
What does it say now? It says like,
I wrote it down. It's so funny because And again, it makes sense because when Shakespeare in Love won the Oscar, you had 5 producers that were on stage accepting that award. But here's what I wrote, and I laughed so hard. It's just so funny. And it says, by permission of Mr. Burbage, a Hugh Fenneman production of Mr. Henslow's presentation of The Admiral's Man in performance of the excellent and lamentable tragedy of Romeo and Juliet, with Mr. Fenneman as the apothecary. I thought that was so funny. And what it reminded me of, I don't know if you've seen it, but there's a movie called Shin Godzilla that came out, I think 2014. And it's we think of Godzilla movies as just man in suit movies, but it's a really smart kind of satire how governments react to tragedies or disasters. And it's funny in that movie because you have all these government types, and whenever they pop up on screen, they get like an identification of themselves, like who they are, right? But each time, like, these people die or they give up their office, and they give it to the main character. So by the end, the main character has like 7 titles that are just scroll. Every time it shows up, it like completely covers his face on screen, that kind of satire. But it reminded me of that. I thought it was so funny that it's like, oh, everybody has to have their slice, right? And so it has that whole, I just thought it was so funny. I laughed out loud. It was so great.
Yeah, I love that too. So we talked about the actors, talked about the Oscars, we talked about the conspiracy theories. Or anything else that we didn't talk about?
The Stephen Warbeck score is gorgeous.
Okay.
I really liked, and we don't have to go too in depth into this, because we've already talked so much about the rest of the movie. But I liked how, like, back in that time, women could not act on stage. So that's why you had actors playing the female parts, right? Mm-hmm. And so the fact that Viola dresses up as Thomas Kent and she puts the mustache on, and there's a part where they're in the ferry, like she and Will, which again, another funny part where the ferryman like says, "Oh, I have a script that you can read." I thought that was really fun, like really smart. But anyway, so they're talking with each other, and Will's like, "Oh, and her bosom. Have I mentioned her bosom?" That kind of thing. But the gender norms that this movie plays with, like back then, you look at it, oh, like a woman couldn't play herself on stage. A man had to play her, to the point where the Callow character comes as a woman. And I was like, oh yeah, how terrible. The woman's acting on stage where they're trying to shut him down. I liked when they performing the play at the end, and it just seems like it gave you a snippet of what it was like back then. To go and watch these plays and be a part of it, 1500s, 1600s, that kind of thing. It felt like you were there at the Rose Theater, and how everybody in the audience is like leaning on the stage and how they're reacting to everything. And I don't know, it's just so rich, and like I said, the complete package just gives you everything, I think.
I mean, and that's something that I kind of miss. I don't think we do that enough anymore. I don't think we get out and we don't go to these productions. We don't do it as often as we should, I think. I think that's what they had back then. They had that was their day. And they'd wake up and do their thing, and then they'd go watch a play for 4 hours. You know what I mean? And that was just how that's just how it was. And I think I don't know. I kind of think we should do it more. I think we should get out more and go see theatrical productions and just get out and go do these things. We don't do it as much as we should, and I think we should do it more.
Yeah, and the ending too it kind of taps into that idea that you're talking about. I think that we mentioned it briefly, but the ending is just, and the Stephen Warbeck score that comes in at the end, it's so haunting. I wrote down, like, it's haunting that we don't see Viola's face, right? Like, we just see that she's, they kind of leave it like she and Will are like, well, we can't be together in this life, but we can be together in your writing. Like, we can live on at that. Right? And so even though these things have to come to an end, we can still go on in the art that you make. And so I don't know. I really like that. It hit home that point, even though it never mentions that by, with words. I think that that's at the end, that's what the movie's actually all about.
Yeah. I think it's a great ending. I think it's totally befitting of the movie. Like I said, overall, really fun movie. I love the script, love the acting, love the direction. I really do think he should have had a bigger career than he did. Right. But I mean, definitely worth remembering for me. I mean, I could put it in again and still really, really enjoy it. So what about you?
Yeah, same thing. It's like I mentioned before, watching it last night, I was like, I forgot how entertaining this is. This is so fun. And there's so much stuff. Like I said, I don't go back because I don't have the inkling or the desire, or it doesn't call to me, but I should put this on more often. It's like it's a good rom-com. It's a good Shakespeare adaptation. It's a good, like I said, Leonardo DiCaprio point at the screen and say, I know that, that kind of thing. And so it's definitely something that should be revisited more, even though it wasn't as impactful as the Oscars seem to think it was.
Yep.
So
all right. Well, let's come back and let's do our Oscar upsets, our top 3 Oscar upsets.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Okay.
We'll
be right back. Okay. Perfect.
All right.
All right. I think that was everything we mentioned. I'm looking at all my notes. Thanks for bringing up Ben Affleck. We needed to talk about him. That was funny. We talked about the, do we want to mention the stuttering when we come back?
Sure, we can do that. I mean,
we can do. Was there anything we didn't mention? And I could just mention that really quick because there was something I found on the stuttering that was interesting. Okay. All right. And then do you have your upsets?
No.
I think mine are pretty recent. And okay. What were some of the recent Oscar winners?
Well, Will Smith winning after the slap, King Richard.
Oh boy. Hey, did you ever see Tick Tick Boom?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Did you like
it? I liked it.
Loved it.
Yeah, I liked it.
I thought that the music was really good, and Andrew Garfield was just wow, just phenomenal. I was like, well, if you gave the Oscar to him, we wouldn't have the stupid slap stuff going around. Like if you had just given it to because I haven't seen King Richard, but Will Smith should have won for something a long time ago. I don't think
we watched King Richard and it was kind of like, yeah, it was good, but
they're just giving it to him because, you know what I mean? Garfield was such a transcendent performance. I don't know if he probably will, but it's like you watch that, it's like, did he just spend all of his energy on this one movie? Like, how is he going to top this and come back? Like, he should have won I don't know, he should have won for that one.
Yeah.
I really liked, like I said, I don't like the Oscars, but I really liked the reaction when Parasite won Best Picture, because everybody just was so supportive of that movie. I thought there was joy no matter what the movie was about. Like,
have you seen it?
Yeah, I like it a lot, but
okay,
I don't know. I just like that I thought that was great. It was like, that's awesome. Like a foreign movie won, and everybody was like, yeah, there was no pettiness in that.
Here's the thing. I think it should just be part of the foreign film category.
Yeah, why nominate?
That's the whole point of the foreign film category.
Yeah,
so they have a category. Why do they got to be a part of the American awards?
Right.
This is for the United States. Let's acknowledge the people who made a movie in USA. That's what it's all about.
Right.
They have their own category. He already won his category. Why is he winning our category? I don't know. It bugged me. Right. Also, I just did the movie, and I think they missed the point completely. What they could have done with the movie. I think the whole when he ends up being, it doesn't matter what you do. You can kill anybody you want. Who cares? I was like, that's the point of the movie. Kill anybody. It doesn't matter what you do. I was like, what the heck? They could have gone a different route, and I would have liked a whole lot better.
Yeah,
because I like the idea of this family kind of moving in on this other family.
Parasites, right?
That's what. Yeah, I mean, that's an awesome idea. And then what I want to see is this. I want the cycle to continue. I'd like to see them like take over the family and have things go on with like no one noticed like it took over, and then somebody else does the same thing to them.
Right.
You know what I mean? Now, all of a sudden, the people that they were in the basement, maybe they're the ones who start taking over the family that took over the family. You know what I mean? That could have been like such a more rewarding experience as far as like the movie itself. Having them say like, "Who cares what you do? You can kill anybody you want." I was like, "Oh my." Seriously, I was like, "That's what you're going for here?"
Yeah,
I totally lost it.
I absolutely, I love the movie, but I absolutely agree with you on why. You know what I mean? I like that everybody was so supportive of the movie, but it's like, but you already won.
Yeah.
Why are you winning like 2 different awards? You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know. It's just weird. Like I said, fickle. So just trying to see other.
Let's just do one, because let's just do one.
Okay.
I think I know which one I'm going to pick.
Okay. Well, we can I want to mention just briefly we won't go into it, but there's one. It's the Russell Crowe Tom Hanks thing. That's it. So it's kind of one but two. It kind of ties in.
Okay.
Let's see. Yeah, that's fine. Oh, yeah, there's some other controversies. Oh boy.
Who's the actor who plays the prologue guy?
Mark Williams.
Mark Williams?
Yeah, he's the Mr. Weasley. He's the dad and
okay.
Ron's dad. Yeah, I'm looking up like biggest Oscar upsets, and Shakespeare in Love is one of them.
Yeah, I know what I'm going to talk about.
Okay. Oh, Alan Arkin won for Little Miss Sunshine?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Oh, and there was that whole thing when they announced, I don't know how they did that. They announced La La Land as the best picture, but it was actually
they
Moonlight.
read the wrong, yeah.
What? Like, how did they do that? Did we ever find out what happened?
Yeah, the wrong envelope got taken out.
Okay, so it wasn't they just because I was like, they couldn't have misread that.
Yeah, it was like
that's crazy. Okay. All right. Okay. Gotcha. Okay.
Are you ready?
Yep.
Okay, we're back. So I think we forgot at least one thing that we wanted to talk about, and that was Mark Williams.
Yeah.
Right.
We mentioned him. But
his performance as the doing the prologue.
It's funny.
Yeah. Go ahead. What do you want to say about it?
Well, the thing that's interesting, I just want to doing the research for, he has the whole part where he stutters and the play is going to be a disaster. And then he goes out and just loses the stutter. But there's actual studies like psychologists and psychoanalysts, this kind of thing, where people with stutters, they use acting as therapy to help them with their stutter. And so you have people like James Earl Jones or Emily Blunt or Bruce Willis or who's the other one that I wrote down? Sam Neill, that kind of, they all had stutters and they used acting to help them through that. Right. And so I like that even it's very smart about that. How the character what is the name of the guy that he plays? Wabash, right? He just comes out and he's able just to do it and he just finds his confidence, and when he's off he loses the stutter again because being on stage helps him focus. I even like that, so that was a nice little touch that they had in the movie. So.
You know what I liked the repeating joke about how will it work out. It's a mystery, it'll just work out. I love that because that's usually how it feels when you're in a play. When you're doing the production, you're doing the dress rehearsals, you're doing the tech rehearsals. Yeah. You're going to open and you're going to be in front of an audience like in a couple of days, and you're like, we're not ready. Like, how's it going to work out? And be like, oh, it'll work out just fine. And it usually does. But really, when you're in that moment, you're like, how are we going to be ready for this? We're not ready. No one knows their lines yet. We don't know the blocking. We don't know, the light cues, and somehow magically it works out and it comes together and you get through it and you're like, it worked out. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of funny when I hear that. I always laugh. It's like, yep, that's how you feel. You feel like, how's it going to work out? It's a mystery, but it works out.
It works. And the stuttering does that. I like how they thought, like I said, it's going to be a disaster. He goes out and that's the turning point. The play is just going to be a smash from that point on.
And by the way, that moment is so funny too. Yeah, it's so funny. And I love his stance, his little Shakespearean stance when he gets out in front of the stage and he's like, got that stance. Yeah. Perfect.
Great stuff. Yeah.
All right. So we want to talk about the Oscars and like some other upsets that have taken place in Oscar history. Mm-hmm. And I think I'll just go ahead and go first because I want to get it out of the way.
Okay. So we just want to do our main discipline?
Yeah, just do one. Yeah, just do one. I mean, because this is obvious for me, and we already kind of talked about it because we started our season this way, and that is Forrest Gump winning Best Picture over Pulp Fiction. It's like,
that's another one.
How is that possible? Like, I know people think that Forrest Gump is more of an Oscar-winning movie, but Pulp Fiction, like we talked about with Citizen Kane, Pulp Fiction broke so many rules and changed the game for filmmaking that it should have been one of those movies that should have won.
Yeah. Well, it's the reverberation that we talked. Like Forrest Gump was great for special effects, like we talked about, but Pulp Fiction changed the way movies were made. All of a sudden, everybody wanted to be Tarantino.
And again,
dialogue.
People talk about Pulp Fiction more than they do Forrest Gump. You know, Forrest
Yeah.
Gump isn't quite as remembered as much as Pulp Fiction is.
With a lot more rivers. You could say that it's because Zemeckis hasn't done a lot of worthwhile stuff after, and Tarantino is even more part of the zeitgeist. But if you're looking at Oscars, you could do Citizen Kane, How Green Is My Valley, winning over that. We could talk about how Driving Miss Daisy and Green Book win Best Picture because it's a bunch of old white guys that look at, oh, I solved racism by watching this movie. I'll vote for that one, right? All these other things. Or when the last Oscar that I watched was when Lord of the Rings Return of the King won, because it was just so boring. Like you could tell after it won like the first of its 20 awards, they're like, oh my gosh, they were just waiting for this one to give it all the awards.
Yep.
Right. And
Yep.
so that was just so dull. And that's the last full Oscars that I watched. But if we're looking at my upset, and again, it's because of the fickleness. When Russell Crowe won Best Picture for Gladiator, again, great performance. He's
Best
got
actor. You must
best actor, right? When he won Best Actor as Maximus for Gladiator, I mean, he's very charismatic. He owns the screen, but they gave that to him because he should have gotten it for The Insider the year before. That is the better Crowe performance. It's so much more nuanced. It's not just a movie star performance. There's actual stuff going on. And the actor that I thought should have won was Tom Hanks, because in Castaway, he's literally the only actor on screen for 3/4 of that movie, right? And he sells it. Like I think we talked about it before, Will Smith couldn't even sell that in I Am Legend. They had to have a dog. They had to introduce other characters to come in, right? Tom Hanks makes talking to a volleyball when he loses Wilson. I just remember sitting in the theater and me and my wife just sobbing because he's just screaming because he's lost his best friend, right? He's just, it's so heartbreaking. And you're like, how do you do that? That performance is so great, right? That's him. Not a lot of actors, maybe no actor could do that, right? But Hanks had already won twice for Philadelphia and for Forrest Gump, right? So they're not going to give it to him again. I think that Castaway is a better performance than Forrest Gump. I think that Saving Private Ryan, John Miller's a better performance than Forrest Gump, but they're not going to give that to him because he already won, right? And so
that's what's always bothered me about the Oscars is if you don't win it for something you deserve, you'll win it later for something you don't deserve.
Yeah,
because we didn't give it to you then, but we'll give it to you now.
Right. Jamie Lee Curtis just won, and from what I understand, she's not the greatest in Everything Everywhere All at Once, right? You look at Angela Bassett, maybe should have won that for Black Panther. Wakanda Forever has the stronger performance, but they gave that to Curtis because, oh, it's your career.
It's
Oscar,
your turn,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, it's your turn. So, well, what was the point of all these other actresses turning in stronger, more solid work? Nothing against Curtis. Again, I haven't seen Everything Everywhere yet. It's on my list, but that's the consensus. They give it to them not because they deserved it, but because, oh, it's their time. Will Smith getting it for King Richard. It's his time, right? It's not so much, and it's the campaigning, right? It's the giving the award to somebody because that's the thing that I really have a hard time with Oscars. Every now and then they'll get it right. Every now and then they'll give it to Silence of the Lambs or something, a movie that does last and does live on, right? But more often than not, it's just very in the moment. It gives you an idea what Oscar voters want that particular time in that particular year. It's not so much about what's really going to last 30, 40, 50 years from now. It's about what's happening in the moment. It's all these award things are just very fickle. It's great. Give awards to people. They deserve that. It's fun being popular in high school, right? But it's subjective. Like at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. I don't remember what won Best Picture last year. Right. So
I never remember which one won last year. I'm always like, what was it?
Yeah. But anyway, I remember that Pulp Fiction didn't win. I remember that Citizen Kane didn't win. That's what I remember.
Yep, that's true.
Yeah.
All right. So I guess that'll do it for Shakespearean Love. Darin, we're almost at the end of our 90s Palooza season. We've got a couple more episodes left.
Yeah.
What's our next one and who's our guest?
Okay. Well, I've got, again, Twitter friend. Her name is Megan Kearns. She's a great critic. She's the co-host of the Spoiler Piece Theater podcast. She's just very prominent as a critic. I've become great friends with her. She's just shown me so much kindness and helped me out with a lot of things. And she's always willing to have conversations. And so I got up the nerve. Again, it's weird that I'm so nervous asking these people who are my friends, like if they want to pop up on our podcast. And she said, yeah, I'd love to. And she chose You've Got Mail. Speaking of
Okay.
Tom Hanks,
All
so and Meg Ryan, so and rom-coms. I don't think we've talked about a rom-com, especially like '90s stuff. How prominent those are.
Yeah.
So again, like Nora Ephron movie in there. It's obviously a remake of my favorite rom-com of all time, Shop Around the Corner. And so yeah, we'll have Megan Kearns on to talk to You Got Mail, and that'll be a fun conversation. I'm looking forward to that.
All right, sounds good. For NostalgiaCast, I'm Johnny Craddock.
And I'm Darin Lundberg.
And a plague on both your houses.
That was mine.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Romeo, wherefore art thou, Romeo? I guess you could do that.
Yeah.
All right.